Hello, we are group A10 and we will be presenting social media's effects on society. Most of us, if not all of us, have interacted with social media in one form or another throughout our entire lives. There are many big, popular social media platforms that people use every day. To name a few, there is Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok. Scrolling through social media are all activities that take time out of our normal lives and give us a look at a digital world of our own. Social media has become a huge mainstay in our modern society, with everybody seeming to have an account on any of the major popular social media platforms. Merriam-Webster defines social media as forms of electronic communication throughout which users create online communities to share information, ideas, personal messages, and other such content. When Facebook first launched in 2005, only about 5% of adults in America use some sort of social media. In comparison, according to the Pew Research Center in 2019, 72% of adults now have some form of social media or interact with it in some way. Worldwide, even, it is a rough estimate that 5 billion users have or use social media on their own personal devices. Social media has become a very useful tool for its users, generating new and unique avenues for expression and allowing for people to plan important events and activities. Applications like Skype, WhatsApp, and Discord allow for instant communication across the globe, for communities to be built for members of that community who can't meet together in person. This is not simply tied to one interaction either, because apps like Twitter and Reddit become incredibly easy for users to keep up with events that occur around the globe. This includes the ability to keep tabs on important social topics and issues that we've seen throughout the entire year. These issues, one could hypothesize, would have flown under the radar without a second thought if it weren't for the genuine responses given by users of social media apps. Finally, we have seen social media become an outlet for expression and creativity that allows for some users to create a career out of it. Platforms like YouTube and Instagram have allowed beauty gurus, video game players, movie enthusiasts, up and coming music artists, and people from all sorts of different genres to come together and create content for your viewing pleasure. Though social media has many upsides, they do not justify all the negatives that have been pointed out in the social dilemma.
Social media companies do not sell your data. They are in the business really of selling your attention. Their platforms are free for customers to use because they use an advertisement-based model to make money. Traditional media, such as television, newspapers, and radio, are one-way static technologies. Advertisers knew very little about their customers. Nowadays, social media companies know a vast amount of information on the customers. Their goal is to get as much attention from the user as possible so they can use all that data they collect to target the user and bring in advertisers. And they do this using algorithms. Advertisers are willing to pay a lot of money for this service. YouTube ad revenue generated $15 billion in 2009, Facebook's ad revenue generated $21 billion in 2020, and Twitter ad revenue generated $108 million in 2020. So let's take a look at the algorithms that help them bring in all this revenue. So an algorithm is just a set of instructions for solving some problem. The term is derived from the Muslim mathematician Al-Khwarizmi, whose major work introduced the concepts of algebra into European mathematics. The Latinized version of his name, algorithmi, is what inspired the term algorithm. EdgeRank is a Facebook algorithm that Facebook used to use to determine what posts or pages should be displayed in people's newsfeed. EdgeRank used three major factors in their algorithm: user affinity, content weight, and time-based decay. In 2011, Facebook stopped using this formula and started using a machine learning algorithm, which takes more than 100,000 factors into account. Today, machine learning is used with most of the algorithms on the biggest social media platforms. The Twitter algorithm, called algorithmic timeline, was introduced in 2016. Prior to this, when you logged into Twitter, your feed was in reverse chronological order. Now the algorithm uses machine learning and is designed to provide you with the most relevant content first, based on your previous use of the platform. Instagram's algorithm is very similar to Twitter's. Engagement is a key ranking factor for the Instagram algorithm. The YouTube algorithm has been developed to serve those that contribute the most to the site. This is reflected in some of its ranking factors, which are based on posting consistency and the number of subscribers a user has. Recommender systems. For their algorithms, the social media giants use what is called recommender systems. In a nutshell, a recommender system is really an automated system to filter some entities. These entities could be posts, people, movies, or ads. It uses user preference to predict items the system thinks the user will like. And it operates by gathering user data, finding patterns in user behavior and action, extracting valuable insight, calculating probabilities, comparing them with the available item inventory, and presenting the most plausible matches. So there are negative aspects to these algorithms, and to sum it up, I will read you a quote from Lex Friedman, an MIT professor, AI researcher, and scientist, who once said, quote, "The recommender system of Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, from everything I know, having talked to these folks and having worked on it, the challenging aspect there is that they have the power to control the minds of what the mass population think. YouTube itself and Twitter itself, they don't have the direct ability to control the algorithm. One, they don't have a way to understand the algorithm, and two, they don't have a way to control it." End quote.
Hi, I will be talking about social media and how it can be addictive because of the specific design and features that each social platform can have. First, we're going to start by saying that almost all social media have the intention to, or were built with the intention to be a persuasive technology. Defectors from the largest networks like Facebook, Google, Pinterest, and Instagram use what they know about what persuaded people and built that into technology. Some social platform network creators even went through classes to learn how to be more persuasive because they want to modify people's actions and to make them unconsciously live their lives around social media. The goal of the creators from these different social platforms have a goal to fight for our attention and compete with each other at the same time. There are some features that keep the users addicted and engaged, like the photo tagging, like button, hashtags, and emojis. The entrepreneurs went on to design features like that, like the like button, read notifications, infinite scroll, and autoplay, to name a few, They were all built with the intention of keeping users engaged and active on their platforms. Facebook even does something where they send emails to the users whenever their photo tagged. They send a notification, and we are not able to see the tagged photo when we open the email. So we have to leave the email and enter the social network to view the photo. This is an example of trying to keep us engaged and curious at the same time to get us to get on that platform and give them more active users. In psychology, this is called positive intermittent reinforcement. There's a psychoanalyst named Roberta Sato, and she describes this as working like a reward that activates the striatum and ventral tegmental areas, which is a dopamine-rich area in the midbrain. So an example of this would be when on social media, people are always using their fingers to pull down and refresh the news feed because you feel like every time you refresh that there's going to be something new, and there is something new always. So this kind of gives us a unconscious habit to be programmed, and it kind of works like a slot machine in Vegas. How you want to keep going and going psychologically, you don't want to stop. You want to keep going.
Hi guys, my name is German Azurin, and today I will be presenting my part of the social dilemma, which is effects on mental health. Minutes. Their timestamp 38-minute to the 53-minute mark. We've already talked about like addiction, like in that time of the documentary. Addiction is like an effect that social media has, as because because there's friends and chatting because you share stories, and like also sometimes you're going to be bullied and have hurtful comments leading to some depression and anxiety and stress, and it could lead to a drop in schoolwork because of the social media. Because let's say like when you like something or post something, you receive a comment that is like kind of hurtful, and you would respond to like ooh, I don't like that. Like, on the other hand, when you see a like or a comment, it triggers some dopamine, becoming an endomorphin in your brain and the nervous system that will continue to want you to keep posting more, so you can get more people on the internet to agree with you and like you. As a result, social media has been the cause of depression in many circumstances as a result from cyberbullying and toxicity, hatred, gossip, and more. In the documentary, I watched that the social psychologist Jonathan Haidt stated that there has been a gigantic increase in depression and anxiety for American teenagers, which began right around between 2011 and 2013. Most of which are girls. Some of them even resort to self-harm and cutting themselves, and it even leads to the worst result possible, which is suicide. And this is because of social media and the mental habits it produces upon many younger teens and kids. It's also from like over reliance on cellular usage and most of the day being spent on a cell phone. And social media has been a part of our life has been a part of most of our life, because even especially in this era, in a quarantine COVID-19 pandemic, we are continually using social media and Facebook, Twitter to check news, share stories, use Zoom to talk to our friends that we used to hang out with pre-COVID. But if we don't want to avoid this addiction to social media, some parents can monitor children's activity by like making a timer spent on social media to avoid the unhealthy and unsafe environments for the children, according to O'Keefe. Overall, I think the negative effects of social media can lead to depression, anxiety, and that does not feel good to the average human. And here are some sources that I use.
Social media has had many negative effects on society, and here I'll dive into a few. In the past, when the internet first came out and social media launched, it was known as the era of information because you could access any kind of information about anything in the world at any given time. The era that we may live in now, as pointed out in The Social Dilemma, could be known as the era of misinformation. And leading the forefront of that is fake news. Fake news is the spread of misinformation all across social media and other sources, trying to pose off as real news. It will have you question what is the truth and what is real, because misinformation travels 6 times faster than real news does on Twitter. This 6 speed advantage allows misinformation to travel so quickly that by the time real news comes on, you won't even know if it's real. You won't know what to trust because is the prior information correct or is the information coming in now correct? This could eventually lead us into a world without trust in anything or anyone. It is already happening as there is social divide in society, which is the dividing of members belonging to certain social groups. In the past, it meant whether you were rich or poor, but now it is also based on certain conspiratorial beliefs such as round earth or flat earth. Is the CDC lying about vaccines and other such things like that? And it doesn't help that social media algorithms are built in a way that leads you to find these groups of like people on social media. If you were to look up on Facebook a group on flat earthers, you may find a group of 1,000 or more users in that said group. And Google, in fact, also contributes to that due to their search algorithms. One person may have a search autofill with climate change and all its negative impacts on the world, while another person could have an entirely different autofill history where it's saying that climate change is a hoax and that's it is supposed to happen. These algorithms can also lead to political polarization, or actually, it rather has. Political views have been more divided than ever, as in the past decade, people have become more and more Democratic or Republican rather than being a mix of the two. This comes at the manipulation of information through social media to influence society and democracy. This together is used to create chaos and divide amongst the people. Like vaccines are political. Democrats are putting vaccines into our children to make them dumber and other such conspiratorial thoughts by people.
Hi everyone, my name is Mauricio, and for the summary part, I would like to say that social media or social networks were initially created to connect people. However, they later turned into a very profitable business, and As we all know, different platforms such as Facebook and Twitter have attracted the attention of a lot of people, especially the youth, which has caused a countless number of issues related to the use of these platforms, from collecting private data of their users to bombarding them with malicious news or fake news. Social media has had many negative effects on our society, and it is expected to get worse if we don't do anything about it. So that's why I want to give you guys some recommendations or things that you can do before it's just too late. One of them will be limit the use of it. As we all know, a lot of people spend most of their time on these platforms or these different apps, and they just become addicted to them. So limit the use of it to a couple hours a day, a couple times a day, or maybe whenever you want to check whatever is going on in the world. That's totally fine. Another thing is that don't share personal information such as your address, your phone number, or the places that you frequent the most. This is very important information, and you don't want these big tech companies to take advantage of this information. So be aware of this. Another thing, and I think this is a very important thing, is that you know or you let people know that some or all the information that we find on these platforms, such as Facebook, might be wrong. And as we could see these past elections and during this whole year, there has been a lot of misinformation that has impacted our country in a very negative way. So be careful. And as last, I think we should ask our government or force our government and people in Congress to make stronger laws that protect our private data, so these big tech companies, they don't take advantage of the lack of these protections, and they try to manipulate us. So this concludes our presentation, and thank you for paying attention.